So how powerful is Livo2? One of our claims was Ewot on steroids, and I think it's justified. And this chart right here is going to give you a good idea with a couple of things that you might have a reference to, like an oxygen bar, uh, how much flow we're actually getting into your body. It's really dramatic. So if you see, I put this little chart together, and on the left here, we have an oxygen bar. You might see them at, a mall. I've seen them in the big city. A big city mall usually has an oxygen bar if you go through. And people think, oh, that's really going to get me very oxygenated. That's going to be very helpful. And while everything is on a spectrum, it's at the very low end of the spectrum of actually making a real difference in your life. Um, those oxygen bars are typically to be turned up probably around 5 liters a minute, which is very high. I know my grandfather had limited lung function. He was very elderly, and we had his oxygen turned all the way up to 5 liters a minute, which was considered very high. So um, I don't think they'd go much higher than 5 liters a minute at an oxygen bar. Uh, and at the same time, 15-minute and those are usually in a short window of time, usually around 15 minutes of application. They're only getting a very small amount into your body because they're only running at 15 liters a minute of oxygen that you can actually be breathing. It's not going to be that beneficial to your overall health and make that big of a difference. If we bump up from that, there's Ewot. This is kind of like the transition before Livo2, when people were trying to figure out, we want to exercise with oxygen, we want to do it correctly. We know the benefits of oxygen, but they hadn't quite figured it out on how to do it correctly and most effectively. So the way a traditional Ewot system would work is you'd have an oxygen concentrator machine. Those typically come in a 10 liter per minute configuration, and they'd even put two of those big machines together and hook them together, turn them on, and they would run that oxygen from those machines directly to a mask that you would wear. So there was just one line coming right, plugging into a mask and putting that mask on. And people would breathe with those machines cranked all the way up, and they would start to exercise while breathing roughly around 20 liters a minute of oxygen. And that was great at the time, but what we've realized is when you're actually exercising, you could be easily breathing well over 100 liters a minute of airflow in and out of your lungs when you're actually exercising. So if you're only getting 20 liters of oxygen coming in per minute and you're breathing 120 liters a minute while you're exercising, that's not really the appropriate amounts. Dr. Manfred von Arden, in his original studies, showed that we wanted to have the oxygen saturation above 68% to get the full benefits of this really therapeutic benefit that he was getting in his studies. So we're way above that with a Livo2 system. But if you wanted to get that type of result from a traditional Ewot system, you would have to have several machines running all in a line. So you'd have to line up probably around 4 oxygen concentrated machines, hook them all together, plug them all in, and turn them all on at the same time and breathe that much air. And that was one of the big issues for a long time, is that's not economically feasible for everyone to purchase these expensive oxygen concentrator machines, and they're very heavy and bulky, and you don't want to have 6 of those inside your house. So no one really knew what to do, and going with bottled oxygen is an option, but that would typically require a prescription and wouldn't really fit into a home use model. So what we did is we went and we developed the Livo2 reservoir, and we were the first ones to do our adaptive contrast Livo2 reservoir. This reservoir is about 7 feet tall by 4 feet wide. And when it's full, it fills up to about 2 feet deep. It's well over 800 liters of oxygen that's filled into this reservoir. And what we do is, instead of having 6 machines turned all on at the same time, running right to one mask, we have one machine, sometimes 2, filling up a large reservoir bag that we can wait and let that charge up while we do other things. And as soon as that reservoir is completely full, typically 1 hour with a 10-liter machine, we will put on a mask that's attached to this large reservoir, and every time we take an inhalation breath, every liter of air coming into our lungs is the appropriate oxygen mixture for the therapeutic benefit, which it's well over 68%. We're closer to 85+% with every single breath coming into your lungs being that pure oxygen mixture. So this is much higher than the 20 liters a minute you would get with Ewot and the 5 liters a minute you would get with an oxygen bar. We're well over 120 liters a minute, and the machine can actually flow even more than that. But the reason it's maxed out there is people typically cannot breathe faster than 120 liters a minute. So that's why we made the graph right at that point.